Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. The case that I'm going to be looking into today is the case of Jodi Arias and the murder she committed of her ex-boyfriend Travis Alexander. This case occurred in 2008. Jodi claimed that it was self-defense, but you will see that it really kind of wasn't. Yeah, Jodi was seriously not right. Like, honestly, you will see. This case is kind of crazy. It was suggested by Brittany, so thank you for that. I appreciate any suggestions you guys have. And of course, if you do have any more, please let me know. Travis Victor Alexander was born on the 20th of July in 1977 to parents Gary David and Pamela in California. He had a rough upbringing. He was one of 8 children, and both of his parents were unfortunately addicted to meth. And quite often they would leave the children to fend for themselves. I believe on one occasion, like, she didn't feed him for like 4 days, and so he had to try and find food for them all. It's just not a very nice situation that he was brought up in. He knew that he had to get out of there. By the age of 11, Travis decided that he was gonna try and move in with his grandparents, which he did. They took him in and he got out of there. In 1997, his father passed away, and his other 7 siblings were then taken in by their grandmother. Their grandmother was a Mormon, so when Travis moved in with her, he was introduced into her faith, and he then decided that he wanted to take her faith too, and he became really serious about it, and he took to his new faith very quickly. As he became an adult, Travis moved back to Arizona, and he became a traveling salesman and found this new love in motivational speech. He worked for a company called Prepaid Legal Services, which was then known as Legal Shield after that. By the age of 29, he was doing really well for himself. He had this decent career. He had his faith that he absolutely adored, and because of his career, he was able to buy himself a really nice house. He had a lot of friends. He had a black pug called Napoleon. You know, he just was doing really well for himself. Also, with the house, he rented out 2 of the rooms to his friends as well. So, you know, he was surrounded by people that loved him. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Jodi Arias. She was born in California in 1980. And from being young, she was very interested in photography, which is something that she would also pursue in her adult life. Her childhood was there's not really much known about it, apart from the fact that when she was in middle school, she was trying to grow some weed, and her parents found it. They come into her room, and like, because they want to see if she's got anything else in there, she's hiding any more drugs. Like you would. I mean, she's their daughter at the end of the day, and she's only young, and she was growing weed. So, you know, they're going to see if she's got out else. So they go in there, they rummage around her room, and she finds that as a severe violation of her privacy. She writes about it in a diary, and she just said that, like, she felt violated as a result of it. Her family described her as being very intelligent, but very strange, and they also thought that she might have bipolar, because one minute she would be completely fine and the next minute she would fly off the handle and be all crazy like. In 2004, she had a boyfriend who she decided that she was going to move in with in Palm Desert in California. So that's what she did. She goes down there, they get a place together, and she moves in with him. And then she's still doing her photography at the time, but then she gets a new job working at a company called Legal Shield, which is obviously the company that Travis worked at. But obviously they were in different locations. Then in 2006, Travis was at a conference in Vegas that Legal Shield put up for all their employees to just come in from all these different places and meet up and things like that. So he was there, and guess what? So was Jodi. And that is where they actually met, and they hit it off straight away. People around him said that they could see an instant sort of connection between the two. He was 30 years old at the time, and she was 27. And his friends were really happy for him. He had apparently been single for quite a while. They were looking for him to find the one, you know, that he would spend the rest of his life with. And then when Jodi came along and they saw how they gelled, they thought that maybe Jodi was that person. And they were pleased. Travis thought that Jodi was perfect. The only problem with her was that she wasn't a Mormon. And obviously, if she wasn't a Mormon, he couldn't be with her because he was, you know, very invested in his faith. And yeah, that was an issue. But they exchanged numbers and then they both went their separate ways. Now, as I mentioned, Jodi did have a boyfriend at home. Well, she goes home and she gets rid of him because they're not in the same place. Like, he doesn't want to get married. He was previously married. He didn't want to do it again. She wanted to be married, kids, all that lot, and he didn't want it. So they were in different places and she did end up breaking it up with him. And obviously now Travis was sort of a new love interest in her life and maybe she could have those things with him. So they kept their conversation up via email mainly. She met up with him a few times and he would go on about, like, when he's talking to her, he would insert like quotes from the Book of Mormon and things like that to try and give her a good idea of the religion. He also tried to encourage her to actually read the book herself. Now, apparently she was already looking into the possible religion of becoming a Mormon because the company that she worked in, Legal Shield, was surrounded by Mormons, and so she found it interesting and was intrigued by it. So she already had it in her head that she was looking into it, but then with a possibility of a relationship with Travis and he was a Mormon, that just kind of amplified it. And a few months later, Jodi had converted to Mormonism. Travis was the one that actually baptized her into the church, and yeah, that was it. So in February of 2007, they officially declared basically to people that they were dating, and it was still a long distance relationship because they lived in separate areas, but they got together whenever they could. They talked a lot, and I mean, when I say a lot, it was like 82,000 emails. A lot. Yeah. So they chatted all of the time. When they weren't emailing, they were together. They tried to get together as much as they could and just go out and do things. So they would say meet at a place, both of them go separately, meet there, spend a few days together and then go back home kind of thing. And it really worked for them. They also bought this book that was called 1000 Things to See Before You Die, and they were just ticking off the stuff on there basically and going to visit all the things that they could. They also began having sex, and obviously that for a Mormon is a huge no-no. Premarital sex shouldn't be done, but he would refer to her as his addiction and his kryptonite, and they did end up having sexual relations, like a lot of them. So when they were emailing or weren't out and about, she would often spend nights at his house. And this is when his friends began to notice things that they really didn't like about her and that they found very odd. She would never leave him alone, like ever. If he got up and went to the toilet, off she would go, follow him, and then she would literally wait outside the door for him to come back out, which is creepy. She was very, very possessive over him. She would go for his texts and things like that to see who he was talking to. If he was messaging someone, she'd ask him who it was, who he was talking to. And it was just things that are not healthy in a relationship, like kind of stalker things. So his friends were rightly so worried about him. They were actually that worried that they took him in aside one time. So they took him in his bedroom, they shut the door so that they could have a conversation free of Jodi. And they sit him down and they tell him everything, you know, that they're worried about, that she's kind of acting like a stalker, and they're worried for his safety essentially because, you know, a lot of stalking cases turn brutal and murderous on more than one occasion. So they're just trying to tell him that they're worried about him pretty much. And as they're talking, they basically say in a hushed voice, I bet she's literally listening outside the door right now. And they go and check. And so Travis creeps up to the door. As he opens the door, ta-da! There is Jodi stood listening in. I believe that was his, like, the revelation to him that made him see that their relationship was not healthy. Jodi should not be doing things like that. And it probably freaked him out a bit. And so that was kind of the final straw for him with regards to their relationship. It was like a wake-up call for him. He knew that it wasn't right for the things that she was doing, and so he broke it off with her. Despite them breaking up, it didn't stop Jodi from contacting him. She emailed him all the time, was even going on about this stalker at some point, that she had a stalker. This stalker was creeping her out and scaring her, and Travis still cared about her. He was really worried about her. And he'd tell his friends, like, I'm so worried about Jodi, she's got a stalker, yada yada. And they would, like, knock some sense into him and be like, listen, she's probably lying. I mean, I'm not saying that she was, but she probably was. They thought that she was probably lying, that she just wanted him to invite her down so that, you know, she could get back in, because obviously he's worried about her, and so he's like, just come down here for a bit and get away from it. And then he realised that that probably was the case. So at some point, Jodi ended up actually selling her house because she couldn't afford it anymore. And get this, she moves in 10 minutes down the road from Travis, and she doesn't even tell him. Like, seriously, does not tell him. She's 10 minutes down the road from him now, and he doesn't even know. It's insane. And obviously he's trying to move on with his life. He begins seeing other people, which of course she didn't like. So one night she goes around to Travis's because she's going to surprise him that, hey Travis, guess what? I live 10 minutes down the road from you now. And she sees him in the house with another woman, like he's on a date. And you're thinking, like, how is she seeing him with another woman on a date when he's inside? Well, she's obviously peeking through the windows. I mean, come on. She began to come around uninvited. She knew his lock code, so he had a garage lock code. She knew all that. She would just, like, enter it and in she would go. She would often slash his tires, hack his Facebook account. She even went as far as to sneak into his house whilst he was asleep through his doggy door. Seriously, Jodi? I mean, why? So, on some occasions, Travis would tell her to get the hell out of his house. And on other occasions, he'd be like, let's sleep together, kind of thing. Which obviously didn't help. I know, like, he probably didn't see any harm in it. But the thing is, she's getting what she wants. And so she keeps doing it because, well, why not? And sometimes he gives in and, you know, lets me in and stay, and then other times he kicks me out. So obviously she's going to keep doing it because she eventually gets what she wants, which isn't good. But, you know, he did it anyway. And I mean, he did things like giving her a cleaning job with a sexy maid outfit because she didn't have a job, and she cleaned his house, which again is kind of just, it's not really moving on, is it? It's just enabling her, essentially. Again, Travis tried to move on. He met a woman at his church called Lisa, and he actually began dating her. When Jodi found out that he was dating Lisa, obviously she was fuming. She began stalking Lisa. She began knocking on her windows, knocking on the doors at night time in the pitch black, trying to scare her. One night, Napoleon, his little pug, was going mad, barking its head off, and obviously Travis thinks, well, there's someone outside, so he goes outside to check, and Jodi's there, peeking through the windows again. And I believe Lisa was there that night as well, so imagine how freaked out she was, stuck in the middle of all this. The next morning, she gets an anonymous email chastising her in the name of Christ and calling her some horrible names. But yeah, this email came from somebody anonymous, of course. I wonder who sent that. We will never know, I guess. Eventually, Lisa couldn't deal anymore, and I can't blame her. Like, seriously, it's not worth all of that. So she is like, I'm sorry, but I'm gone. Now, I don't know how this happened, but Travis actually manages to somehow convince Jodi to move back in with her grandmother and away from him. And she does it. I don't know, but she does. Which is good for him, of course. And he was just thankful that she was finally gone. Jodi then, obviously she moved back. She got a job working as a waitress for a while. And she began talking to a different guy, someone called Ryan, who she began chatting to quite a bit. And then they had arranged to meet, you know, in the sort of distant future. Not so distant future. Travis, also moving on, met a woman in the February of 2008. It was at his church. She was called Mimi. And the problem was that Travis thought that she was perfect, like he did with Jodi. But the thing was that Mimi saw him more as a friend and didn't really want anything more than that. And that was when Jodi began calling him again. They began sexting and things like that once more. And then, I don't know what it involved, but they had this huge blow-up argument on email. and it exploded, and Travis basically told her that he didn't want anything to do with her anymore, don't contact him anymore, things like that. He'd had enough, and he didn't want to know her anymore, essentially, so he cut it all off. I have no idea what it was about. That was never released, but yeah, it exploded. I believe before that happened, Travis had planned on going to Cancun on a work trip with Jodi, but then obviously all that happened, and then he ended up changing it to a different woman. I believe it was Mimi. They were due to go on the 15th of June, and as you can imagine, Jodi was not impressed by this. Then on the 20th of May in 2008, something really, really horrible happened. Like, Jodi's grandparents' house was burgled, and that was also where Jodi lived, bearing in mind they took one item, and that one item was a .25 caliber Colt pistol. It was her grandfather's gun, and it was the only thing that they took, which is pretty random, but there you go, that actually happened. So just bear that in mind. On the 2nd of June, Jodi made plans to meet her new love interest, Ryan. He actually lived in Utah, so she was planning on driving down and going meeting him and getting together. She rents a car from Redding, California, which, bearing in mind, is an hour away from where she lived, which, why would you do that? Like, there were closer rent-a-cars, but yeah, she travels an hour out to get a rent-a-car. And when she gets the keys to this car, they bring out a red car. And she's like, no, don't want a red car. I would like a more discreet colour. So they give her a white one instead. She makes a few calls to her friends on the way. You know, she's going to Utah. She's going to meet Ryan. That's definitely only where she's going. Remember, Utah. Told you that I went to Utah. Everyone knows she's going to Utah. It was around an 11-hour journey. And instead of like normally, you would just fill up on the way, because she wouldn't have been able to get there on one tank of gas. She stores in some gasoline tankers in her boot so that she can fill up, and she doesn't have to go to gas stations, because guess what? They have a register of the cash that you pay there, or the card, and also they have cameras. So it seems like she wanted to avoid those for some reason. Then, at some point in her journey, she turns her phone off. She turns it off for quite a few hours before turning it back on again. She arrived in Utah on the 5th of June, which was one day later than they had planned. She was supposed to get there on the 4th, and there she is on the 5th. She called and texted Travis during her trip, and when Jodi actually arrived in Utah, she had brown hair, dyed from her normal blonde colour, and she had cuts to her hands, which, when Ryan asked about them, she said that it was broken glass. She was normal, you know. She seemed excited to be there. They enjoyed their time together, and then on the 7th, she gets back. She hands the rent-a-car back in, and the car has no mats at all. There's not any floor mats in there whatsoever. And there's this red stain on the seat that she just says is Kool-Aid. Yeah. So at this point, no one's heard really anything off Travis, which is kind of odd for him. And we're now on the day before his work trip to Cancun. So you would think that he's contacting Mimi, trying to arrange their plans and stuff. They're literally going the next day and she's heard nothing of him. His friends also had heard nothing of him. So on the 9th, they decide that they're going to go around to his house. They knock on the door, no response. They type in the code to the garage because they know it, and they enter. Then his roommate finally comes out. And he's like, what's going on? And they're like, have you seen Travis? And he says, well, he's gone to Cancun. He had his music really loud, so he didn't hear them knocking or shouting. But then, obviously, he realised that they were in the house, and he comes out. And then they tell him that actually that work trip isn't until tomorrow, so he can't be in Cancun. So he's putting together that he ain't seen Travis in a few days because he's gone on a work trip, when in fact, he wasn't even supposed to go until the very next day. So yeah. They go to Travis's door, knock on, shout, don't hear anything. He gets his spare key, he enters, and as soon as that door opens, they see a pool of blood on the floor. There was blood kind of everywhere. His roommate then enters the room, goes into the bathroom where he finds Travis's naked body in the stand-up shower. They obviously call the police.
Hello?
Hi, so what's going on?
He's dead. He's in his bedroom.
Okay.
In the shower. Okay, how did this happen? Do you have any idea?
No, we have no idea. Everyone's been wondering about him for a few days.
She said that there was blood. So is it coming from his head? Did he cut his wrist?
It's all over the place.
Police attend the scene. They ask the normal questions that you would expect, like, is there anyone that you can think of that would have done it? And they all just are like, Jodi, his stalker, ex, who's kind of crazy.
Has he been threatened by anyone recently?
Yes, he has. Okay. He has an ex-girlfriend that's been bothering him and following him and slashing tires and things like that. Her name is Jodi. I don't know if he's ever reported. Hold on. No, he hasn't reported anything about Jodi's behavior.
They knew that she had done it, but there was just not any proof yet that she had done it. So obviously they have to go about the normal way. Police figured it was a personal attack because there was blood literally everywhere, and they canvassed the scene for evidence. Travis's body went for autopsy, and his death was so brutal. He had suffered 27 stab wounds. He had suffered a slit to his neck from one side to the other, which cut the carotid, the jugular, and his trachea. He was also shot in the head with none other than the same type of gun that, you know, went missing from Jodi's grandparents' house. Ooh, who'd have thought it? So, obviously, they arrange a funeral for Travis, and all his friends, his family are all there. And the audacity of this woman, Jodi, turns up as well. Let's face it, you all know that she's killed him. She murdered him. And then she's at his funeral, like, what the F? Seriously? Just the disrespect and the just audacity of the woman is unbelievable. At the crime scene, they found a bloody handprint slapped on the wall, I believe, in the bathroom maybe. They took a sample of that, of course. They found this small spot of blood on the washing machine, which enticed them to look inside the washing machine, and inside there they found some sheets, some towels, along with a black camera. The camera had been put through the wash in bleach, and when they found the memory card that was inside, they found out that it had been wiped, and there were 5 steps taken to try and wipe this camera card, in the hopes of making it unrecoverable, then washing it in bleach to seal the deal. Well, now on the 19th of June, they managed to restore those memory card photos. Can you guess whose face they saw first in the pictures? The first one that greeted them was a naked picture of Jodi Arias in Travis's bed. Now, they had had sex before, and what I neglected to mention actually was that they often took naked photos of each other and things like that. She loved taking pictures, and so it was a thing that they did. So you could think, well, you know, they did that. It was a normal thing for them, and so, you know, they were just old pictures, but they weren't old pictures because they had a timestamp on them, and that timestamp was from the 4th of June, which was when they determined that was the day that Travis was murdered. So that just proves that Jodi was there that day. They were taken at about 1:40 p.m. Then there was a lot of naked pictures, and then there was a final photo taken of Travis in the shower at 5:29 p.m. He's looking straight into the camera with the water washing down his face. They're basically trying to take a bunch of sexy photos, but that photo is believed to be the last one of Travis alive, because the ones that actually followed, which it's believed that the camera was knocked out of her hands or something as she attacked him, and it took pictures on the way down and carried on taking some pictures. They believed that obviously it captured the murder. So the next few photos show Travis's body bleeding and someone's foot in the picture. It seemed like she lured him in the shower with the pretense that she was taking sexy photos, that she attacked him and eventually killed him. She had him in the shower, washed him off, cleaned up a bit, put the items in the washer, and then got the hell out of there. And then she went to Utah and had a date with Ryan, like nothing had happened. Jodi was arrested on the 15th of July at her grandparents' house. They found that she'd actually packed the car up. Inside she had a gun, she had 2 knives, a bunch of clothes. So yeah, she was obviously planning on running, it seemed like. They extradited her back to Arizona. They interviewed her and things like that, and they showed her this naked picture of herself, right? And they ask if that is her. She looks at it and she's like, well, it looks like me. Like, what? She pretty much went on to claim that she wasn't there. She was, of course, with Ryan. They contacted him and he came forward to say that yes, she did spend time with him. However, it was a day later than they had actually planned. And again, he said that she seemed normal, excited to be there. I mean, can you imagine meeting her after she's just freaking murdered her ex? I mean, his mind must have just boggled after finding out that. Insane. So remember the handprint on the wall? Well, it was actually Travis's handprint, and they found 2 sets of blood mixed in with the handprint. One was from Travis and one was from Jodi. They also found her hair there. And so the detective questions her like, how did this happen? How did your blood and hair get there? And she's like, well, I was there before. I've been there loads of times. That's how it happened. My DNA was already there. She just kept digging and digging and digging. Whilst in the interrogation room, there is some pretty famous footage of Jodi singing to herself, doing handstands, which I don't get. Like, she's in there being questioned about slaughtering her ex-boyfriend, and I mean slaughtering. It was absolutely a brutally attack on him, and she's doing handstands. I mean, she said something along the lines like she was in there for hours and she was bored, but when you're being questioned for murder, is the typical response of boredom and then to be doing handstands? It's just weird. So she gets booked, she sits in jail for a night, and then in the morning she's ready and raring to go with a new tale to tell. So now, they basically have her down to rights at being at Travis's house, okay? So she had to change it, didn't she? Well, now she's saying that, yes, okay, she was at Travis's house, but she didn't kill him. This is according to Jodi. 2 people, dressed like ninjas, in all black and ski masks, came bursting in the door. They were trying to assassinate Travis. One of the ninjas hit her over the head, knocking her out. She woke up to Travis screaming for her to get help. I'm sorry I laughed there, but this story is just ridiculous. Ninjas? Seriously? Anyway, Travis is screaming for help and she manages to fight off one of these ninjas who was a female. She manages to break out of there and she never looks back, like at all. She's out of there, she's gone, doesn't look back, doesn't call 911, doesn't do anything, goes on a date with Ryan, goes home. She also said that one of the attackers went through her belongings. They found out all the information about her, her parents, her family, everything. They knew exactly where she lived, that she was scared for her life, essentially. When they asked why she didn't call 911, she said, well, her phone was dead, of course. Silly. Yeah, nobody believed one bit of it at all.
They didn't discuss much. They just argued.
About what?
About whether or not to kill me.
A witness of what?
Him. With Travis.
Of Travis's murder.
Yeah, but I didn't really witness it. Didn't see much. I just,
You need to make this believable, because it is not believable to me right now. So what you're telling me about 2 people coming in, or however many people coming in and taking care of him and letting you go, is just so far-fetched. I can't believe it.
I mean, can you blame her? She's going on about freaking ninjas, for goodness sake. Ninjas coming in and assassinating her boyfriend. And then she just goes out on a date after it. Come up with a better story at least. Come on. The trial wasn't much better. She decided that she was going to represent herself. And then there was an incident in which she tried to push into evidence these letters that were written by Travis. And he said some pretty incriminating stuff in these letters that he wrote. Well, you never would have guessed it, but they turned out to be fake. Within days of discovery of these letters being a forgery, Jodi goes to the judge and tells him that she's in over her head, and they go ahead and reinstate her legal team. The trial began on the 2nd of January in 2013. She pleaded not guilty to murder, but eventually would admit to murder, pretty much to try and avoid the death penalty. The prosecution went and said that Travis was a good man. He had been seduced by Jodi, and then she murdered him because she was jealous that he was trying to move on and see other people. Jodi's defense came back and tried to flip it all on Travis, said that he was this aggressive, abusive, violent man, that he abused Jodi, and she murdered him in self-defense. He had become violent that day. He comes running out of the shower, running after her. He choked her at one point. She manages to escape. down the corridor. He's running after her. She ran over to the gun that she kept in the closet and she fired at him in self-defense. And then she doesn't remember much after that, but obviously she must have been so terrified after that she stabbed him 27 times. That story didn't really fly either. Like, nobody really believed it. But she really properly tried to turn it on Travis. Another thing that they found the gun, the shell casing, the bullet casing? Bullet casing. They found that, and it was sat in a pool of blood with no blood on top of it, and so basically that meant that she didn't actually shoot him first. The attack happened first, and then she shot him and the bullet casing landed on top of the blood, and if it was the other way around, the bullet casing would have landed and the blood would have landed on top of that. So basically it proves that she didn't actually shoot him first like she was trying to claim that she did. Jodi spent 18 days on the stand. She was going on about how her parents abused her. She shared intimate details about their lives together, their sex lives, how Travis verbally and physically abused her. She was a beaten woman. And they also, to try and prove that, she used to tape their phone sex sessions as well. And they played a section of that in the trial. Like, seriously? He's going on about how he wants to tie her to a tree. He didn't know that he was being recorded. And basically, they're playing these to try and prove that he isn't this good Mormon man that everyone thinks that he is. And because he isn't the man that they think he is this abusive, aggressive, violent man. And they just didn't know it because they didn't know him at all. It's just all a big disgrace, really. The lead prosecutor stated that Travis suffered greatly at the hands of Jodi. And I mean, what happened to him, the attack was just brutal. So what they thought happened was that she's taking all these pictures, sexy pictures. She tells him to get into the shower to take some more sexy time pictures, and she manages to get him down in the fetal position in this little shower. It's a little stand-up shower, there's not a lot of room in there, so she has him like curled up on the floor, probably pretending that she's taking more sexy pictures. And then when he's in a vulnerable position like that, because he was like quite a big guy, he'd been working out and things, so you wouldn't think that she would be able to overpower him. And that is what she said throughout, you know, everything. Like, she wouldn't have been able to kill him because she wouldn't have been able to overpower him. But he was in a fetal position and she began stabbing him. He really tried to fight back. He had defensive wounds on his hands. It's thought that he was actually able to get out of the shower at some point, get to the sink where he was coughing and spluttering, and that is how the blood ended up there. He then tries to run out of there, down like the hallway where he was either running, crawling away, I'm not entirely sure, or stumbling, sorry, probably not running at this point because obviously he is wounded severely. And that is where she starts attacking him again and slits his throat. She returned his body to the shower, so she dragged him to the shower, put him back in the shower, rinsed him off a bit, and then she obviously took the camera, the sheets and the towels and things, put them in, deleted the photos, including the one that had been captured accidentally of her own foot, and tried to wash away the evidence and tried to destroy the photos. She then shot him in the head, just to make sure, I guess. What she did to him was just beyond horrific and beyond brutal. Absolutely disgusting. After deliberating for 15 hours, the jury found Jodi guilty of first-degree murder. On the 23rd of May 2016, the jury didn't reach a unanimous decision on her sentencing, and so they had to reschedule to another one. They had another jury come in, and again, they didn't reach a unanimous decision. And they deadlocked at 11-1 for the death penalty. So that ended up leaving it to the judge's decision, by which point the death penalty was already taken out of the picture. On the 13th of April in 2016, Jodi Arias was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. I believe she tried to appeal it, but was denied. There are some phone calls somewhere that Jodi is talking to someone that did a rap video or a documentary on her, I believe. And in it, she just sounds like normal, happy. I don't know. She doesn't mind prison life, I guess. Which is just insulting to poor Travis's memory. This horrible crime was just brutal, and it showed that her jealousy just overpowered, and you know, it ended up in poor Travis losing his life. My heart, of course, goes out to all of his family, all of his friends, anyone affected by this case and his tragic loss. But yeah, that's the end of the case. If you've enjoyed this video, give me a big thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for similar content. Anyway guys, that's all I have on the case of the crazy person Jodi Arias and poor victim Travis Alexander. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye.